The time is now 6:30, so I will call the specially called meeting of Mayor and Council for the City of Snellville, Georgia, on Tuesday, September 1st, 2020, to order. We do have a quorum present. We just have a couple items of business. Item number 1, we have consideration and action on market construction and leasing agreement between the Downtown Development Authority, Midcast, and the City of Snellville. Tony, you want to go through this?
This is the same contract that we discussed at work session last week. And we've had one other discussion with lawyers representing our Casto since then. We don't have no real issues with the contingencies, which are pretty important. That is, we have to get to a publicly bid contract and a constructed building before and an approved bid process before this contract can kick in. And at any point where we fail to get to a bid project or a price that's appropriate for the construction of the building, then this contract will go away if we don't reach those contingencies. And those contingencies then get passed along to the lease agreements that are signed in the leasing process as contingencies of those leases under this agreement. There was concern by the lawyers that they might not know when the approvals are given by the DDA and the council. They didn't want to have to monitor our meetings. And so one of the minor changes that may come up in the near future, and when they get back to us, is that they might want a form that we attach that where actually Butch, the person who communicates for the city under the agreement, actually sends them confirmations in writing of the resolutions that get approved by council and by the DDA, because that's the requirement. So we'll be responsible. They won't be responsible for, they just will be responsible for not moving on anything that doesn't have a written notification from Butch that demonstrates the dates when those resolutions were approved. So that's one of the it's a pretty good enhancement so that we don't have any confusion in the communication process in the future. It's a 4% construction oversight. We did have a little conversation with the lawyers over this issue of reasonable care responsibility that they would have in overseeing the contractor and the architect. And an important part of that is they're going to be giving instructions to those people as our representative under this agreement. And if they give a bad one, that's their instruction. They're going to be under the contract, they're responsible for it. We're not letting them off the hook for that. We are encouraging them to protect both of us in the construction process. So there should be an indemnity that comes upstream, protects them first, and then us, that says, contractor, you're responsible, and you indemnify the city and our agent from exposure if you don't do the foundation correctly. It's going to be your problem and your problem alone, and we're off the hook for those kind of things. So we didn't mind indemnities just so they were below us and they were pushed down to the people who are actually responsible for the work. But the one area that they will be responsible for is in doing the functions that they're contracting to do, there will be exposure if they do it incorrectly. And so if they give an instruction or don't give an instruction correctly that they should have, they'll be responsible for construction issues. To the extent they are leasing and they made a representation that ended up not being true and we all were in trouble, we would dump on them for that, because their job as our agent in leasing is to do that correctly and state the correct thing. So no release of liability there. That's one of the big changes from the original agreement that we got to where we finally ended up in the one that you have in front of you. And the leasing part of it is again a 4%. The hard part of that is there's a front-loaded 50% of the fees get paid at the time that lease agreement becomes final. That is, all the contingencies are removed, and the tenant is bound. And so we'll actually preload. We wouldn't have the rents. The balance of it goes with the rents. There's a possibility that 4% might increase by 3% if another agent is involved. We don't really anticipate a lot of that occurring, because under the preferred tenant that is there person that they're bringing to the table in the process, he sort of leases the whole thing and it gets subleased out. And so that's sort of the general description. But I know there were some questions. Anything that I can answer, I'll be glad to.
Anyone that has any questions can feel free.
You good? You okay? You good? Good. Okay.
Let me ask one that's probably a little bit off the rails a little bit, but if we pay a commission on a lease and the lessor defaults and moves out, do we still have to pay the balance of it?
No, the balance really is a contingency of the payments as they come. So it's which is the sort of normal way to get paid along these things.
So win, lose, or draw, we're on the hook for 4%, half of 4% going in.
Right, but it's not exactly quite that difficult. We would turn to the tenant and what fee we had paid out that had been wasted on their behalf. We would include that in damages with the balance of the rent payment. So that would be the party that we would look to get our money.
I think the way it's in here is they get the 50% of it at the signing, and then the other 50% gets paid in full the first month that they make a payment. The tenant makes a rent payment. So they get paid out, but by the time they're making a rent payment, if they break a lease, then they're going to have lease penalties.
And that's not exactly.
Is that not right?
That's not exactly my understanding. My understanding is that they'll sign leases and it still won't pay out until the contingencies are removed. And I couldn't put my finger on that exactly, but I'll try and make sure that I describe that to you, because we talked specifically about that.
Okay.
And so it was a contingency-free event for the prepayments. So.
Okay, and so tell me, tonight what we're doing is we're asking for a vote to allow me to sign this agreement, provided that in any further conversations, there's no material changes to this, or what are we doing?
That would be what I think is my recommendation to you is to go ahead and approve the form. Mm-hmm. And if there are any material changes to it, and authorize the mayor to sign the contract. If there are material changes to it, then it would be subject to my review of the final version and then my recommendation to you. And then if it was material, it would be brought back to this council if it was a material change. If it's insignificant, like Butch is just going to be the communicator and there's a sheet of paper that says that, those insignificant things, we will surely let everybody know of any change. But hopefully it can get approved tonight, where that minor components of it are something that we can inform, and the agreement will remain approved, because it's anticipated that would be the case in here anyway. So.
And are there any major changes on this from what we saw Monday? Or is that what you opened with?
No, hadn't changed anything.
Okay.
Hadn't changed anything. We've had one telephone call with lawyers since then, and we did have a telephone call that Mr. Sanders set up with the party, with our agent, and it was spectacular. The communication there is really good. The lawyers didn't get quite on that same page, and I'm sort of thinking they might between now and when we hear from them. So it was, but nothing really serious in that conversation. It was just, we told them about this meeting, and we told them we could do it on the 14th, and so we were sort of trying to get a draft from them so we could see it tonight, but we didn't get it. But what we talked about was not material issues. So we were hoping to get it approved and turn our agents loose to go sign up our tenant and be ready to start doing some design work on this. There's an urgency about it.
All right, any other comments for council? All right, is there a motion?
Mayor, I make a motion that the council approve the mayor to sign the market construction and leasing agreement between the Downtown Development Authority, Midcast, and the city of Snellville, barring any material changes.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. It's 6 in favor and none opposed. Okay, next we have approval of change order number 1 to the city winter construction CM at risk contract to allow for award of precast concrete design subcontract. Who wants to take that one? Mr. Powell.
This one is the document that I handed out, and it's the construction manager at risk agreement, which is in the AIA form, which I believe everybody has at least had some exposure to this contract and its contents and its purposes. You'll remember that we authorized a $15,000 funding of the pre-construction phase of this agreement, with the understanding that you were not binding yourself to anything further until you got the actual amount of the guaranteed maximum price, which is what is a key ingredient in construction manager at risk. That is, you see a number that he does not exceed unless he's going to pay for it himself, and that is the guarantee. So a number that you would compare to your budget and make sure it was within the guidelines of what your engineers had believed the project to be. So you still have that test. That real critical test is in your future. We have been modifying the form of this agreement as we went along in order to get ourselves to a point of a form that the contractor would sign. So there's been some subsequent negotiations. This form is a little bit different from what you looked at before. It still has the $15,000 commitment to pre-construction. But you'll also see that it incorporates a design of the concrete structures that are necessary to be constructed or to be manufactured for the parking deck. And there's a separate bid sheet that you see it's been a learning curve a little bit for me, in that is a bid sheet for the cost of design and engineering of the parking deck is what it amounts to. So it's a big factor in coming up with your guaranteed price, to be able to know what the design looks like and be able to estimate the volumes of concrete, which is what most of this structure is going to be formed by. So it was viewed that we are under a time schedule. They can't get to the guaranteed price, and but the design process needs to begin. And so we've tried to cure that inside this winter's agreement in 2 ways. We're putting the $300,000 bid number into the pre-construction calculations, so that we're bound to it. We are actually agreeing to now allow winners to go forward with the design phase of the precast concrete design. We are not removing the contingency of the guaranteed maximum price. What we didn't want to do, what we were concerned about, is putting ourselves in a position of being bound to winners controlling the design and the precast concrete structures, having control over that, and have committed $300,000 to that part of the process, and then get stuck, have to go back and start from the beginning with another contractor. And so what we've done is, in the termination provision, we still have the contingency of approval, but we control the contract and the design elements of what we're agreeing to pay for. So if the number comes back and y'all don't like the guaranteed price, or there's some issue with regard to that, you're not held hostage. We simply terminate, and they have an obligation under the termination provision to then provide us with the designs and the work that is done that we've been paying for all along. Now, I think the city manager estimated we're about 95% through the design. So the design of that deck is a critical ingredient in really allowing the precast concrete to be engineered. So it's meshing those two things, but until you get both of those, then the contractor couldn't give us. So we're sort of chicken and egg thing. We've got to move on. There is a risk. There is a risk in it and city manager and I talked about that. The risk is really we get to the point where we take that away and there's a problem with it. We're going to look to the subcontractor, but if we've already terminated Winters, we're probably not going to be looking to them after termination for any error if we terminate them. So that's the risk. We've gotten control of the contract and made it assignable and compel them to give it to us. But we will lose a little bit of accountability in the process if we decide to go that direction. I don't expect that. There isn't anything about our relationship with Winters over the past that would signal there wouldn't be fairness in that second process. But just trying to keep you guys in a position where you're not committed to something and at risk of being a hostage in the negotiations at that point in the future. So that's really it. The contract itself is really pretty self-explanatory. This is one of those I like looking at the headings. The headings say, this is the relationship of the parties and explains it, whose duty is to do certain things, and puts the construction manager. You got a pre-construction where everybody's getting together and doing planning and cost savings and analysis, that we're on the same page instead of being competitive bidding out there and the contractor actually doing cost cutting inside of their bid package that we probably don't know about in order to be the low bidder. It becomes a cooperative effort in the process. And
I can tell you that the process to this point, we've had weekly phone calls. We've already saved money on the deck by amending the type of topping that the deck will come with. Nothing in our relationship with Winter, either prior to this contract or since we've started this process, is given me any pause at all. I really think Todd and Dave will remember when we accepted proposals and reviewed the proposals, they had a budget number in mind, and that budget number has not changed because the part of the fee down here it attaches to the precast concrete engineering. The 3.5% is still based on that $11 million budget number that we knew they were using all along. So I feel very good about where we are, and I think that Tony has assured that we have protected ourselves as far as taking this first step on the road to construction, if you will.
If I can add, as far as the largest expense on here is precast concrete engineering submittals by Metromont, and Metromont was the precast supplier for at least the two lowest bidders, if not all three of the lowest bidders. So they were, even if Winter weren't to work out, as Mr. Powell talked about, Metromont would probably still be in the mix, so we wouldn't have to restart. They were definitely the person who was the go-to.
So with the price of the $366,000, when does that get paid? Does that get?
When did what?
The $366,000, which is the precast concrete engineering sum, when do we pay that? Right when we sign this?
Over time.
Okay.
As the work as Metromont finishes the work.
Okay.
as fast as they get it done.
So as we work through this, they're going to take draws off the 366, and this is to get us the engineered drawings we're ready to build?
Well, we have CPL is the designer engineer. designs the concrete to meet that plan. I mean, it's like bringing in all these precast pieces of concrete, big pieces of concrete that a crane will put in place. And they need to do this to get us that guaranteed maximum price, which will be sometime early in October. So this work, it just goes hand in hand.
Thank you. Did anyone else have questions? Lots of confusion? No confusion? Everybody's good?
After pre-construction, there'll be a trigger to the construction process, but it's a written document that comes back before this board to be approved. So the big picture of this contract is not approved in the action you're taking. We are in exactly the same place with this agreement that we are with the marketing agreement. Is we are still communicating with Winters over some fine tuning issues. One issue is just it's a concept of penalties for failure to meet the time requirement of the contract. The time requirement of the contract is really going to pop out to you guys in that guaranteed minimum price. Under section 2.2.3, you see a whole list of things that are incorporated into that guarantee. And so it's sort of an outline of the key issue, the key things that are going to be accomplished by the contractor once he knows how much money this deck is going to cost. He's got a schedule for completion, and he's committing to a completion time. And our little bit of difficulty with Winters has been there was a penalty for not meeting that requirement. It's not quantified in this yet as to what that penalty would be, but they wanted to make that the only penalty. And with this agreement, and just so everybody knows, this isn't my everything Snellville notebook. This is my pending agreements for town center notebook. And so this is so we are incorporated into this document all of those CASTO documents that get the construction of the pads to an elevation that contractor doesn't control, but they have to wait until that gets done before they begin. Then there's a coordination, because everybody who's coming to all the other buildings want to park in this parking deck. And so there is a time requirement that's not specific at a beginning point, but we've got to create a structure that gets us to finished on time, because it's a triggering event. And so if we don't get there on time, our point is we can't really tell you what the damages might be that start happening out there. And so we just want the law to control. Just you're liable for what you're liable for if you don't meet your time requirement. And they want to say $500 a day, and that's the maximum. Well, I can't tell you it'd be anywhere near $500 a day, if it took a really long time to do a parking deck and everybody was waiting with their construction money and bond money out there. So it's sort of getting that timing down, and that's so we've got some fine tuning. There's a little bit of fine tuning on inside the construction manager at risk. They actually do public bidding. It's a public bidding process, and that's something that we have to insist on. We just put their requirement in there, and we're having a little discussion over those just the wording of that. So in approving this step, we would appreciate if we got some latitude to make some minor modifications, but nothing major. If it's major, we come back before this board and get it approved.
Okay, does anyone have a motion?
Motion to approve change order number 1 to the city winter construction CM at risk contract to allow for award of precast concrete design subcontract for amount not to exceed $366,603.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other comment by council?
Do we need to add in the motion the ability for there to be changes as necessary if approved by the city manager? Because you did mention that there were going to be some things.
If that addendum were attached to it, to the approval, that would help us. It could really speed us up to get to a final document.
So would the gentleman be amenable to amending his agenda or his motion or whatever that thing was? Okay?
I would be amenable to that. How would you like to so amend it?
I think as you stated it on the record.
Yeah. However, I said it the first time.
I'll agree to that.
So do we have to vote on the amended motion first before we vote on the motion, or are we good?
I think you're good. I think it was just clarification of what
What you were
I
saying?
sent it in dates, and it's been clarified.
Okay. And Gretchen, you're fine with all of that? Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the contract not to exceed $366,603. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That is 6 in favor and none opposed. Next, we have consideration and action on Resolution 2020-14, abandonment of property located at 2288 Scenic Highway. This is something that we had on our consent agenda for last Monday's meeting to move ahead with abandoning this property. We didn't have it in the form of a resolution, so we're coming back tonight just formalizing it in Resolution 2020-14. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve Resolution 2020-14, abandonment of property located at 2288 Scenic Highway.
There's a motion. Is there?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I need to clarify, the resolution here in the heading says, Resolution of Mayor and City Council of Snellville abandoning a public alley located adjacent to 2316 Lenora Church Road. Are we good with the address that we've got stated? Because I've got 2288 Scenic Highway.
Point of clarification, that strip runs between those two properties.
Got it.
One property fronts on Lenore Church, the other, 2288, I believe, fronts on the other highway.
Okay.
So depending on how you want to look at it, the Lenore Church property actually runs the entire length of that alleyway. So it probably makes more sense to say adjacent to 2316.
Okay, which is what the heading lists. So is everybody's good? Okay, so we have a motion to approve by Gretchen. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Christie was the second. I'm sorry. The addresses were catching my eye. I didn't catch that. Okay, so with that, we'll take a vote. All in favor, raise your hand. It is 6 in favor and none opposed. The alley is yours, Miss Norton. Good to see you. We do have one other item that Butch was asking to add to our agenda.
Are we, Mayor, at the point of order, are we allowed to, in a specially called meeting, amend our agenda?
We are. Yeah, we are.
Oh.
It has to be advertised for a special call, yes.
So we'll see you back here tomorrow night?
Do we need to do this?
On the next agenda.
We can do it on the next agenda.
Regular meeting.
Okay.
Just take a look. This is, change order is a misnomer here. This is what we talked about on the town center update and in the project update, where the county was not making any progress on the intersection at Wisteria and 124, and basically, it wasn't on their priority list. So they have agreed to let us take over the management. We've already had meetings with DOT and with CHA, who is doing the right-of-way improvements for the town center. So it really is a housekeeping matter. We need to go ahead and officially recognize that the money doesn't change. It's still being funded by joint city-county SPLOST money, and so it's just an administrative change.
Okay. Then with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I got Christie. All in favor, please raise your right hand. 6 in favor and none opposed. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you, council, for making time for this.